great to see so many entrepreneurs in the room today, many women entrepreneurs. I had a lot of fun talking to many of them. You can hear? Can you hear me now? Okay. So, folks, it was great to see so many entrepreneurs in the room today. And when I mentor many budding entrepreneurs or CEOs of startups, I get a very common theme for many of them. Do I have the right idea? Will I get the right funding? Will all the ducks line up? And I want to share my perspective, a small story. It's a real story. So 35 years ago, in a small city in India, they lived in a happily married couple. The husband was an accountant in a construction company. The wife was a homemaker. They had 6 children. The eldest 15, and the youngest was 5. And all was going well suddenly when the husband passed away, leaving behind a 35-year-old widow with 6 children. She didn't know how to speak English. She was only a high school diploma. With her back against the wall, she had 2 fundamental choices to make. Do I go back to the village and have the elders take care of my kids? They work in the farm, they have a life. Or do I stay back and be bold, take some risks, and figure a way to give my children a better life? And she chose the latter, bold, risky move with many unknowns. One thing led to another. Soon she became an entrepreneur, started her own chemical factory. And all her kids educated to double graduate degrees. The youngest of them is standing in front of you. Thank you. I wouldn't be here today if my mom didn't take the risks, wasn't bold, didn't have the entrepreneurial spirit to do something different, have a better life for herself and her children. I've been very fortunate. I've been, part of some very successful companies and startups and big companies as well. I've been part of 3 successful acquisitions. And at Cisco today, I build products and solutions that connect the unconnected with a portfolio of products, enterprise and IT products, software platforms, and solutions. Innovation is key in everything that we do. The key value proposition of our solutions to the customers is for them to innovate at a rapidly changing pace. The pace of change is really changing everything. Companies that are not able to thrive and survive in the changing environment are left behind by companies with newer business models. They're really changing the game. Look at how Amazon changed, first in books, then in retail, and now in IT. Disruption after disruption. Results, 850% of revenue growth in 8 years. Look at how Uber is changing the taxi industry. Not fundamentally offering anything new, but digitizing their operations and creating a much better experience for the consumer and the workforce. Look at how Spotify and Pandora are going behind the music industry with over 40 million subscribers today, taking on digital giants like Apple iTunes, and so on and so forth. What Square is doing in the point of sale system, what Tesla is trying to do to the car industry, what Google and Facebook already did to the print industry, advertising industry, and what Airbnb is doing in the hotel industry. Now, if you go back to history, in 1876, America had its first World Fair. 10 million people attended it to mark the 100th birth anniversary of the nation. But it heralded the future as much as it celebrated the past. 1876 was not really when the Industrial Revolution started, but it was a time of fruition, the point of critical mass. It was the nexus of advanced steam technology, mass production, railroads, telegraphs, all coming together. It created a profound impact on society, socially, culturally, and economically. The world was never really the same again. In many ways, the Internet of Everything of 1876, of 2015, is similar to the time of 1876. Over 99% of the devices are still not connected. As we get more things online, and the pace of change is really very fast. Today, stable wireless platforms, well-defined software interfaces, and the availability of cheap and reliable sensors is making it possible to connect anything, from cars to coffee pots, And just not making it possible, they're making it certain. Open source hardware and software is allowing programmatic interfaces to complex systems, weather stations to locomotives. This is really changing the way we operate and the way we, in some sense, work, live, play, and learn. Now, whenever we talk of a revolution, we always talk about the impact it creates on society and the value it generates. So let's look at what does a 1% improvement mean. A 1% improvement for exploration in the oil and gas sector results in a $90 billion value over 15 years. If you look at commercial aviation, 1% reduction in fuel savings cost results in a value of $30 billion, and so on and so forth. You look at retail, healthcare, manufacturing, smart cities. Amazing value gets created. Now, the question is not if this is 1%. The question to ask is, what if this is 2%, 5%, 100%, 200%? What value will be created? Today, more and more things are connected online. Technology is now powering majority of the business processes. The world generated more data in the last year than in the 5,000 years that preceded it. We expect 50 billion devices to be connected by 2020. We call this the Internet of Everything. When people, process, data, and things connect, amazing things happen. And it's already changing everything. Today, we are able to control the lights of our house or the temperature of our house remotely from our iPhone. Today, doctors are able to have more meaningful discussions with their patients about their health and their care-abouts. Businesses are now able to have more meaningful discussions with their customers and creating more value-added services. But this is today, and tomorrow is yet to come. Tomorrow we shall envision pill bottles self-reordering for themselves, smart carts taking care of you at the checkout lane, crops telling the farmer when they should be harvested, power plants dynamically adjusting the production of power to meet demands. We will be able to track air and water pollution at unprecedented levels. Driverless cars will become more commonplace, easing traffic. Now, different businesses are at different parts in this journey for IoE. Some are connecting more things online, embracing what we call the Internet of Things. Some are using technology trends, mobile, social, data, and cloud, to create new business value, while some are already there, using market trends and connections between people, process, data, and things to create new experiences and new outcomes. I'd like to walk through some real examples that Cisco is working with industries to solve these. Let's look at mining. Now, mining as an industry has not changed in decades, in probably a century. Every day, hundreds of miners will suit up, go underground. When they come back, they write reports, give it to the supervisor, who will analyze it, and maybe give input to them when they go the next day. Working with one of the largest mining companies in the world, the challenge was, how do we improve mining production without increasing headcount or costs? And how do you ensure increased safety? Using a combination of machine-to-machine and person-to-person connections, using Wi-Fi and sensors on the mining equipment and the miners themselves. Real-time video collaboration between the miners and the supervisors and the experts. The results are staggering. Within a few months, you're able to see 400% improvement in mining production. That's 400% in an industry that has not changed in decades. And most important, improve safety for the miners. Next, let's look at manufacturing. We're working with the largest tire manufacturing companies in the world. On their plant floor, the biggest problem they had was different tire components were misplaced, unable to track and trace them, resulting in huge losses for them and decreased output of production. Using machine-to-machine connections with sensors to track all the components, they're able to increase, within a few months, the production of tires by 20%. and wastage as well. Next, let's look at IoE in retail. We've all seen, from our favorite retailer, whether it's Macy's or Nordstrom, flyers that come in the mail. And majority of the times, these flyers go from the mailbox to the trash can. Using Cisco's connected mobile experiences, we're able to create more real-time, micro-targeted, location and context-aware engagement. Our strategy is very simple. When the consumer comes to a retail store, first you detect, then you connect, and then you engage. We're able to tell retailers the number of people at the store at a given time, which aisles are the busiest, what does the time spent in a store equate to the wallet spend. In malls, we're able to tell the mall owners which lanes are the busiest. That may help them to improve better billboards or advertisements or charge more. In airports, it's able to then streamline the traffic. One of the biggest problems that retailers also have is employee productivity and how do you manage it. If you ask the retail stores, the number of people at a checkout counter is a function of 3 factors. The time of the day of the week, weekend or weekday, and seasonality. It's Christmas time or long weekends. This results sometimes, and many of you have seen it, long waits at the checkout line, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And a lot of times people leave the store because they don't want to wait so long. Using connections of mobile and social data with CMX, we're now able to predict much more the number of people at the checkout line, making the store manager move people who are working in the back office, whether it's in packaging or inventory tracking, to the front to help in checkout, and vice versa, resulting in a more efficient workforce. Now, I talked of examples in mining, manufacturing, and retail. But this sort of innovation and this sort of newer ways of doing things is happening in every industry. Process, healthcare, retail, smart cities, governments, and so on and so forth. And that's where it's generating tremendous value. Now, let's next talk about some of the technology challenges and potential solutions as we embrace IoE and take it mainstream. I talk of 3 key verticals here, which I believe have the maximum potential for IoE: manufacturing, transportation, and smart cities. And we heard about many of these today in various talks. If you ask the line of business owner or the CXOs, what keeps you up at night? You'll get similar answers. How do I do regulatory compliance? How do I get operationally efficient? And how do I get newer sources of revenue? Now, as we embrace IoE and we get more and more devices, there are many challenges. I list 5, which I believe are critical. Converged managed network, operations and resilience at scale, security, how do you get distributed intelligence, and last but not the least, application enablement. Now, I can talk on each of these for a long time, but given the time limits we have, I'll spend a very little time on each of them and spend a little bit more time on distributed intelligence, which is, to me, the intersection of IoT and big data. As we get more and more devices online, proprietary systems, proprietary protocols, machines, robots, we need to ensure that we do this with the right architecture and right planning. Today, if you look at, we have really 2 networks. An IT network that many of you are more familiar with. It's generally open, based on TCP/IP. And then there's an OT network, which is closed loop, proprietary. And some of them running protocols that were designed 30 and 40 years ago. As we move to a converged managed network, bringing more and more things online, the key is to ensure that we do this seamlessly, because this is not a transition that will take a day or a month or a year. In many ways, for those of you who remember the mid-90s, this is a transition the industry did when we moved from IBM SNA to TCP/IP. It's going to take a while, but needs to be done properly. Next, let's talk about operations and resilience at scale. As we bring more and more devices online, we're talking of tens of thousands of network devices, hundreds and thousands of sensors. It's not practical, feasible, or desirable to configure each and every one of these. This is where the power of software-defined networking, controller-based orchestration, and policy-based orchestration comes in play. We need to have a highly available system. We need to ensure that it's fully automated, self-managed, self-healing, having high visibility, and very easy troubleshooting. Now, security. Now, security is on top of mind for everybody. As we bring more and more things online, we are really increasing the attack surface. Today, we have clients, servers, endpoints that, a hacker can really attack. As we start bringing a plethora of devices online, we're really increasing the attack surface tremendously. We're having many new protocols come in as well. The regulatory compliance is huge. Many times, data of a given company needs to be within a given company's domain. Data of a given country needs to be in the same country's domain. Privacy are critical issues that we need to solve. These are challenges that we need to really solve as an industry if we need to succeed in IoE. Next, I'll talk about distributed intelligence. I talked about the fact that 99% of the devices are still not connected. We're going to bring 50 billion new devices online by 2020. As we bring more and more devices online, these are generating more and more data. The data is growing at a rate much faster than the bandwidth. In many ways, we are seeing a collision of two worlds. At one point, we have more and more devices coming online, 50 billion of devices. These devices are generating more and more data. And now it's no longer about the transport of data. It's about the intelligence of data. This data is coming from geographically disparate and diverse sources. The world generates about 2 exabytes of data a day. That's huge. But most of the data will be useless if we don't act upon it at the right time, create the right actions that affect business processes and outcomes. So let's talk about distributed computing. We are all familiar with distributed computing. We have client-server model. It's very good for web applications. But if you look at IoT apps, there's fundamental difference between web apps and IoT apps and what the assumptions are. Web apps, for the most part, will assume ample bandwidth. They have different latency requirements, different scale requirements. And they assume they're always connected. IoT devices may not be always connected. You may have intermittent connections, and the connections may be over very slow links. This fundamentally requires us to have intelligence at the edge of the network. This is what we call as fog computing. Having intelligence at the network, ability to mine the data in real time, create action that affects business processes, resulting in low latency, resiliency, better security, and tackling the problem where data is growing much, much faster than bandwidth. Now, let's take a real example with a real customer to put this in perspective. Working with one of the largest oil and gas companies, that's a Cisco hardened 819 network device. It's hardened, it can work in any temperature, in various conditions. And we attach to serial ports the ability for us to monitor various sensors, in this case, pressure valves. We also have the ability to globally set policies for a variety of these devices at a given time. So for example, say we are monitoring the pressure in a given range. Now, we have a very thin analytics engine running on the network device. So as long as the data is within the given range, I really don't need to send any data upstream for processing. Only when the data exceeds the range do I need to send the data upstream, and they may take the action, maybe shut the valve down. This results in a huge reduction in data, 1,000x for this customer. Next, let's talk about application enablement. This, along with distributed intelligence, I believe are key for our success. There's a requirement to have an immense diversity of applications that we need to have when we talk of IoE. Rich interconnections. For this, we require an open, scalable compute available on the network devices. In the previous example, we talked about the network device. That device needs to have an open compute. It needs to have the ability to run third-party applications on an open SDK with open APIs in an open ecosystem. In some cases, it may need storage as well. This, I was just telling Naveen earlier in the room, I was talking to one of the largest building manufacturers in the Bay Area. And if you look at the next generation workspaces they're building, it's a fully IoT carpeted space. The lights are LEDs powered over Ethernet. These lights talk proprietary protocols on the light itself. And they want the client side of the protocol to run on network devices. But these devices, these applications will not be built by the same vendor. They want the ability to run third-party applications on an open compute environment on the hardened switch or router or compute device. This is very critical. Last, I'm going to talk about what we need to do to accelerate IoE to benefit society. Now, we talked about the impact it can create on society, the amount of value it can generate, the challenges it has as well. But we need a team effort to build an IoE ecosystem. This requires partnerships across public and private sector, whether it's corporations, startups, city and government, research labs, universities, etc. So I talked about various products and solutions and outcomes that Cisco is really helping in terms of IoT. But Cisco's commitment to IoT and IoE, it goes far beyond that. Cisco is the founding charter member of the IoT World Forum. We had our first meeting in Barcelona. We had 800 members, invitation only, and corporations. We discussed the challenges and solutions in various verticals. The next session in Chicago had 1,500 members, and we have the follow-on in Dubai in December. Standards development, even though it's in its infancy, it's very critical. We need to ensure that the IoT platforms, the devices, the sensors operate on an open ecosystem. This is extremely critical for us to be successful. We also need a global partner ecosystem. If you look at various verticals I talked about, there are experts in the industry in various verticals, whether it's Rockwell, a Schneider, or other companies. We need to leverage those global partner ecosystems who are deep into their customer relationships for a long time. And we also created a $250 million IoT investment fund targeted towards accelerators, startups, and venture investment. I'll touch a little bit on two topics. One is Cisco's Entrepreneurship in Residence program. Because I know many of you entrepreneurs are wondering, how can you engage with Cisco, get some funding, and engage with us? And I'll talk about the innovation centers. So Cisco Entrepreneurship in Residence program is basically a startup incubation program. We're looking to work closely with software startups in the fields of IoE, big data analytics, smart cities, and cloud. We believe that the next inventions of ideas are coming from startups. Now, as many of you know, Cisco itself is undergoing a massive transformation. As we go into more outcome-based selling, there's an increased focus on software investments. We believe that offers from these startups, coupled with offers that we have and our partners have, will accelerate our journey. So how can you work with Cisco? We started this last year. We had about 6 startups that we funded. We accepted about 2% of all applicants. And our criteria for accepting are, in addition to having good idea, is that we're looking for startups that have just received seed funding, angel funding, or Series A funding, have the first market-ready product, and the first set of few customers. This is where Cisco can come in to accelerate the technology deployment, go-to-market, and channels. Now, in addition to all the usual incubation benefits that you'll get, one of the key things that Cisco will also do is that pair the startup with a business group within Cisco and have an executive sponsor to help guide how you can move forward. We had 6 startups, like I said, in the first cohort in spring of last year. And one of the success stories we have is DG Logic. DG Logic now is helping power the front end and visualization of various Cisco analytics solutions. Very small company. In fall of this year, we funded 11 startups across US and Europe. We already have Mentat Innovations. Mentat Innovation is using their machine learning expertise. Precisely, they're using real-time Wi-Fi access point data to do predictive analysis and working very closely with Cisco on our big data solutions. So these are some of the examples. There are many more success stories, but you get an idea. It's working very closely with Cisco, in addition to the incubation benefits, pairing with the business group to make sure that you have vet the idea, accelerate the technology deployment, accelerate the go-to-market and channel with the customers. Next is the Cisco Innovation Center. So we have about 7 IoE innovation centers. These are funded by Cisco Sales. We're looking to co-create and co-innovate with startups, with partners, with customers, with universities and research labs. We offer opportunities for internships for university students. We're offering some incubation and help for startups. We're looking to co-create proof of concepts and solutions in various verticals. We're also looking how can we fund research in universities so they can think of the next big thing that needs to happen. So to close up, right, I did talk about IoT, IoE, and the impact it creates on society, the value it will generate for the economy, and so on and so forth. We talked about the technology challenges and the potential solutions and the areas where I believe will be the maximum investment for entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. And last, I talked about, what can we do to turn IoE into reality? How do we ensure we have an open ecosystem? How can you as entrepreneurs engage with Cisco in what we can do? It's a very exciting time. This is really getting into, like I said, reality. I leave you with one of the famous quotes from French poet Victor Hugo. Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. I know many of you have awesome ideas, and the market is ripe for the Internet of Everything. Thank you.